Alrighty, so the September international break is now over, which means it's now back to full MLS action as we're gonna have 14 games that's gonna happen, and just like what we saw coming back into the Leeds Cup break, well, actually the second week after coming back to the Leeds Cup break, we have pretty much all the games that's gonna be happening on Saturday night in that tight window between 7:30 p.m. Eastern all the way to midnight 30 a.m. Eastern time, and then we have one game that's going to be happening on Sunday, and then the one lone FS1 game that we're going to have. But this week is really kind of like a mini Heineken rivalry week because we definitely have some of the bigger rivalry that is going to happen this week, including the one that I'm pretty sure everybody want me to talk about, and we'll get to that game in a bit. But first, speaking of Heineken rivalry week, we start off with Atlanta versus Nashville SC. Remember when this game used to be a big rivalry game? And think it still is, especially with the way that, if both of these teams are playing at a high level, this game was really hyped up to be a big rivalry in the southeastern region. But recently, yeah, it has definitely taken a hit, mainly because, we have one team that's currently at the bottom of the Eastern Conference and are looking like they're fading away and their season is done. That is Nashville SC, and then we have an Atlanta United team that, while they're still fighting for their playoff lives, the jury's still out on them whether they can make it or not. The good news for Atlanta is that despite the fact that they are below the red line right now and the first team out, the playoffs started today. They still control their destiny. They do have a game in hand over DC that did play just last week and took advantage of that game of jumping above the red line. But the bad news is that you need to win that game in hand, and Atlanta will get that game in hand down the line. But all time meaning 4-4 and 3 in favor of Nashville. This is the first of 7 games that start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. So anytime when this, of course, happen, you know what I'm gonna do? I'll probably just ground hop, and I'll basically watch the replay of some of these big rivalry game in full, or even watch the highlights in some of these games. But the last 5 head-to-head matchup was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. It was a 4-0 win that Atlanta had against Nashville. Nashville had 3-1 against Atlanta. Both teams had two draw, or both teams drew 2-2 after that, and then Nashville won 2-0 against Atlanta United. Now, theoretically, Atlanta needs this one more than Nashville because Atlanta, they're still in the thick of the playoff race. They're looking to try and climb themselves back above the red line. Well, that depends on what DC does in this game against NYCFC. But for Nashville, if they want to stop the bleeding in terms of just completely fall off the cliff for the second year in a row, right near the end of the season, this is the game to do so, to get themselves back into the conversation, because while they're still within distance, again, the Eastern Conference playoff race, it is still very tight. I really think that's going to go down to the wire. They need to win this game. Otherwise, they're really starting to fade to a point where we're going to start talking about even some Eastern Conference team that might be even out of the playoff picture. Now, moving on, we got Cincinnati versus the Columbus Crew. So hell is real is this week again. No, it's good to the fact that we have hell is real, and then after that, not long after, we have our Trafico. That is the battle of the team in the top of the West. But in this Ellisboro Derby, well, it's not the battle of the two top team in the Eastern Conference. It's still a very good battle. Cincinnati with a 16-3-8, and Columbus with a 14-7-5 record. And I think over the years, you could say that besides El Trafico, this is right up there, maybe on the second list in terms of the biggest rivalry right now. Obviously, everyone knows that El Trafico right now is the hottest rivalry right now. But these two Ohio teams, I mean, I said it before, and I'll say it again. I do think that one of these Ohio team is gonna go deep into the playoffs. I would not be surprised if that team is gonna be Columbus, with the way that Columbus has been very good. I mean, if you just don't look at what happened on in the last game, where that was just very unfortunate situation. They're definitely a team that could look to go deep and try to defend their MLS Cup crown. Whereas for Cincinnati, they're still hovering around. They're still doing good, although there are that concern about the defense of this team. But in terms of the all-time meetings, 7-4-4 in favor of Columbus. Last 5 head-to-head matchups, Cincinnati actually won 2-1 against Columbus on the road. That's a very rare loss that Columbus have suffered at Lower calm field. But Columbus did return the favor by winning 3-2 against FC Cincinnati. Then Columbus win 3-0 against Cincinnati. Then Cincinnati win 3-2 against Columbus. And then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams. Now, keep in mind, one thing I also want to mention, Cincinnati has not done very well this season at TQL Stadium. I just realized that my laptops needs to be plugged. So let me just plug uh the battery because I didn't realize it was about to run out of battery. But yeah, Cincinnati, they have not done very well this season at TKO Stadium. Well, I say they haven't done well. They still have a good record, but for a team that is near the top of the Eastern Conference and trying to challenge for MLS Cup, yeah, their home record has kind of taken a bit of hit. They've been very good this season on the road, as it's been ever since Pat Nolan took over this team. So there could be a chance that maybe Columbus could get a road win in this one, especially the fact that Columbus is very good this season on the road under Wilfred Nancy, one of the best road record in the league. So this should be a very intriguing kind of Hell is Real derby. And like I said, besides El Tráfico, this is probably a game that a lot of people will be keeping an eye on. And not to mention, it doesn't hurt the fact that this is also a rematch of the Eastern Conference final of last year. Now, moving on, we got DC versus NYCFC. So DC 8-8-12, and again, the good news for DC, they're above the red line. The bad news is they don't control their own destiny because the team behind them does have a game in hand. But in this game against NYCFC, who has an 11-6-10 record, NYCFC does have the overall all-time meaning 12-3-7. Last five head-to-head, it was a 2-0 win that NYCFC had against DC. Then DC won 2-0 against NYCFC. Then it was a 3-2 win that NYCFC had against DC before DC actually won 2-1 on the road against NYCFC before NYCFC won 2-0 on the road against DC United. So obviously, this should be an interesting game in the way that, DC has definitely started to pick up their form a little bit. They've definitely been playing well enough to now get themselves in the driving seat above the red line. But like I said, they don't control their own destiny. They need to keep winning games and hope other team will lose so they can stay above the red line. Whereas for NYCFC, this season it's been kind of a bit wobbly. They haven't been doing well lately, especially on the road this season. They're not a good road team. The this year. So this should be interesting. We'll see whether or not a DC can get a big win to now continue to keep pressure on those teams below them because you don't control your own destiny. If you keep winning games and you stay above the red line, you're putting pressure on teams to keep winning games to a point where they have to win that game in hand if they want to get themselves back above the red line. Now, moving on, we got Inter Miami versus the Philadelphia Union. So the big news coming out of this is that Messi is going to be returning in this game. By the way, this is basically a huge news flash that I dropped. I am going to be going to an Inter Miami game. I'm going to go, I think, the 28th, if I remember, when they play against Shard FC. Hopefully, Messi, of course, will be healthy by then. Want to see him in person as well. But yeah, in this game, he is making his return. I don't know if he's going to be starting in this game. If I was Tata Martino, I would not start him in this game because it's been a long time since Messi has played. It's been June since he last played, and I think it's best for him to have him off the bench. In fact, have him do this for the next couple of games. I know obviously Messi is the showpiece, and everyone want to go there to witness him and stuff. But we're getting to a point where I wonder if Tata Martino learned from last year, where last year this was around the time of the period where I get that the league was caught up in this Messi hype and stuff like that, but that hype kind of caused the downfall for Inter Miami because you remember when Tatsumaki was just keep playing him even though he was clearly hurt, and then he was done for the season, and that ruined their chances of a late playoff push. I'm pretty sure he learned the lesson from this. He's gonna take it easy because you don't want to ruin your golden goose before when the playoffs begin. But coming into this game, you're facing another team that is trying to battle for the playoff position. That is the Union. I mean, that has to be bad news for the Union. They want to get themselves in closer into the playoff conversation, and now they're gonna have to face the return of Messi, who somehow probably is gonna score a couple of goals in this one, if not assist a couple of goals. But all-time meaning, 4 wins apiece for both of these teams and 2 draw. Last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was a 2-1 win that Miami has against the Union before the Union win 4-1 against Miami. Then Miami won 2-0 against the Union for the Union winning 2-1 against Inter Miami, and then it was a no draw between both of these teams. So yeah, again, coming into this game, something tells me Inter Miami's probably going to win. I mean, on the return of Messi, they're not going to ruin that kind kind of moments. So yeah, we'll see if that, of course, is the case, especially with the fact that they're playing at home this season. They have they have been very good this season at home. Been pretty much unstoppable this season at home. Now, moving on, we got Montreal versus Charlotte FC. So you talk about a desperation derby. Who would have thought that? I would have said Charlotte would be in a desperation derby, but it feels like reality started to hit Charlotte lately. I mean, I know Charlotte has really been one of the most surprising team this season, and they've been punching above their weight, uh, despite the lack of talent that you can see with the team. But lately, you kind of started to see that it started to caught up to them, and that defense that has been the reason why they've been playing above their shoulder, it started to crack a little bit. Now the good news is they play against a Montreal team that, just like Nashville, they are heading in the wrong direction right now. 6-9-12 is their record, whereas Charlotte is 10-8-9. So all-time meeting, at least Montreal says that they have never lost to Charlotte. They have won 3 out of the 4 meeting between both of these teams, and that included the last meeting when Montreal won 2-0 against Charlotte. Then it was a no draw between both of these teams before Montreal winning 2-1 against Charlotte, and then Montreal winning 2-0 against Charlotte on the road. So yeah, again, this is going to be interesting. The fact that, again, Charlotte, if they want to get themselves back to where they were. I mean, this was a team that a couple of weeks ago, and even pre Leeds Cup, I said that this team could be a dark horse contender. But again, they're one of those teams that, unfortunately, the Leeds Cup break kind of didn't came in a right time, and that, we've seen before where before Leeds Cup break teams can have a good season, and then after Leeds Cup break they kind of got off to a slow start, and the narrative kind of turned. That's kind of what we're seeing with Charlotte right now. They haven't really been playing very well, and that they're hoping that they'll get themselves back into that conversation of being a dark horse in the East, and could be a sneaky team to compete for the Eastern Conference title. And it will start with them playing against a lowly Montreal team that, I mean, it's not going well for Montreal right now. They are heading into the same direction that Nashville is, just completely fall apart, even though they're still in the midst of the playoff race. Now, moving on, we got Orlando versus the New England Revolution. So speaking of another team that is in the heat of the playoff race. So New England, of course, getting the 2-2 draw on that one, that kind of helped their causes of making the playoffs, although realistically they would love to won that game. And technically, where they are in the standings, I mean, I don't know if they still control their destiny, but they're not that far from the playoff line. And you remember, they still have those games in hand as I speak. Now, obviously, this game, Caleb Porter is not going to be available in this one because, after he made that some comments about the referee, the league did not appreciate. Yeah, he's going to be suspended in this games, and depending on how you view it, that might be a good thing if you're a New England Revolution fan. Though that being said, they're going to be playing against an Orlando City side that is 10-7 and 10. They did get a win at home in the last game, which is something that they haven't done a lot this season. They've been struggling at Exploria Stadium for these last couple of seasons. They're one of these teams that, for whatever reason, they just don't play well at home compared to when they're playing on the road. But all-time meeting 8-7-6 in favor of New England. The last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was Orlando winning 3-1 on the road against New England before Orlando won 3-2 against New England. Then New England won 3-1 against Orlando before New England winning 3-0 on the road against Orlando. Then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. If you remember, this is actually a matchup a couple of years ago we saw in the playoffs. I think it was in that COVID shortened season when New England was able to move on, and Orlando just kind of completely lost their discipline. They had, I think, 2 red cards in that game, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this should be an interesting matchup. Again, Orlando, hopefully their last win at home could be something start of good, because again, they're like Charlotte, where they're kind of like a team that the Leeds Cup kind of ruined their momentum. They had good momentum before the Leeds Cup break, but after that, and especially with them not doing very well in the Leeds Cup. Well, I say they didn't do well, but they kind of suffered the same fate that they suffered in the last Leeds Cup, like sitting in the round of 32 against the Liga MX side that they could have probably had a chance to win, and yeah, we'll see whether or not if they can continue if this home form that again has been very shaky this season against a team that really wants to win to get themselves really in the playoff conversation. Now, moving on, we got Toronto versus Austin FC. So speaking of playoff conversation, both of these teams are in their respective conference, and anytime when you have these kind of matchup, you know that I know playoff 6 pointers are big in terms of two teams that are battling for playoff position facing off against each other is big, but I argue this is even bigger because again this is a chance to improve your chance in your respective conference. For Toronto, I believe they're currently in eighth right now, and they at one point they separate themselves, but now they're back in that mosh pit that is the Eastern Conference playoff race. Big 10-3-15 team record. It's crazy the fact that you could be that under 500 this season, but you're still in the playoff race in the Eastern Conference. And again, it doesn't help the fact that that's gonna add the narrative of the fact that the playoff system in MLS is just broken right now, and it's just too there's just too many teams that make it to the playoff, too many teams that is clearly not good and clearly almost at best be mediocre, still get awarded to make it to the playoffs. What out of the wild card race. In fact, I would say that looking at the playoff race in the East, if this was in the Western Conference, none of these teams probably would have made it because I think the West this season in terms of their playoff race, I think it's a little bit more competitive compared to the East. Although I could be completely wrong though, so don't quote me on that because again, I only glance on the standing. I've been glancing on the Eastern Conference playoff race a lot because the Western playoff race, I mean, it is still underrated. There are still teams that are truly in that race. Austin is one of those teams with a 9-7 and 11 record, and they only play each other once. It was a 1-0 win that Austin had against Toronto in the first ever meeting. So this is the first ever meeting at BMO Stadium between both of these teams. So yeah, this should be very interesting of who wants it more in terms of getting a win to improve their playoff chances. My money is on Toronto. I think they could get this win because Austin is a very tough team to figure out. They're in the last couple of games they have been a tough team to figure out. I mean, it used to be it's easy to figure out Austin when they play on the road, which is just kind of play that break but don't bend kind of tactics and hope they score one lucky goal and somehow win it. Or if they have a game where it's an expectancy goal that completely goes against them, then yeah, Austin's gonna win that game because been their specialty this season and in the past as well. But lately it's been kind of hard to predict because they can have good games and then they just have some absolute shocking kind of games that just kind of makes you question how in the world are they still in this playoff race. Now, moving on, we got Chicago versus the New York Red Bulls. So you could argue this is also another desperation derby. Again, we're getting to a point where there's going to be a lot of desperation derby kind of matchup, especially in the East. And this one, this I think is the first of 3 games that starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern and 5:30 p.m. Pacific. And the reason why I say this is a desperation derby is that Chicago is starting to end up almost in the same fate as Charlotte and that or I'm sorry, not Charlotte, but Montreal and Nashville, where their hopes, even though they're still alive, but they're heading in the wrong direction, and that again, that narrative looked like it started to come again, where this team always collapse around this month of the period, and they're facing against a Red Bulls team that it's hard to believe they have now drawn 13 times this season. They're now tied with St. Louis in terms of the most draw in the league. And if you're a Red Bulls fan, it has been a very frustrating last couple of games. Really, the last couple of months as well. This is a team that, for whatever reason, they just are just completely snake bitten in front of goal. They had many of these games where they've been creating chances but don't put it away, and that has resulted in terms of them dropping points and so forth. And they also are started to stare down the narrative of, oh, that's so Metro kind of narrative look like it's gonna start to happen again. So certainly, again, when you have narratives starting to come, both of these teams looking to try and maybe defeat that a little bit in this head-to-head matchup. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 33, 16, and 23 in favor of the Fire. The last 5 head-to-head matchup was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. Before, the Fire did win 1-0 on the road against the Red Bulls. Before, it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, a 3-3 draw between both of these teams, and then the Red Bulls winning 2-1 on the road against the Chicago Fire. So yeah, this should be interesting. And again, both of these teams desperately need a win. One because their playoff hope is starting to dimmer if they lose it again, and they're probably now joining in both Montreal and Nashville, potentially completely out of the playoff race and heading in the wrong direction. And then the other team is just getting a win, even though they're currently fourth in the standing. They have not played very well, and that again that the problem of finishing, they have to fix that. It's almost like ever since they missed email Frostberg and him on the IR list, it's kind of completely, at least they've been completely run the well dry in terms of the attack. I mean, not even the return of Lewis Morgan has helped this team. I thought that was going to help this team in terms of the finishing, but no, it's been rough going for this Red Bulls team in front of goal, and they desperately need a win against a team that again are staring in that September narrative of collapsing and not making the playoffs again. With that being said, forget about changing boards or stopping the video and change the board. Let's do this live. I've done this a couple of times. And I probably should do this more often because I only really need to stop the video while I'm changing the board. But in the next matchup, and now we're gonna talk about some Western Conference matchup because it's kind of interesting on that board. All the matchup except one of them were Eastern Conference matchup, and again, I think we only have one game this week that is an interconference matchup. We're getting to the part of the season where you're not going to see a lot of interconference matchup, and I think the schedule maker did that on purpose because as we head into the stretch run, oh, you want to have a matchup within the same conference because playoff seeding and then making the playoffs or battle is going to be the key thing, and the key thing to do that is that you want to have matchup that are within your conference. But that being said, now looking at some of these Western Conference matchup, we start with Houston versus RSL. It feels like these two teams have played each other almost every single week. I mean, they play each other a lot in these last 2 years, and I'm pretty sure both of these teams must hate the fact that they play each other a lot, though. Unless you're a Houston Dynamo fan, because I think the Dynamo love to play against RSL. They have RSL number in the last 2 years. In terms of the all-time meeting, well, actually, in terms of the record, 11-8-8 is the Dynamo. RSL have a 13-8-6 record. All-time is 16-13-14 in favor of Houston, but like I said, Houston has really owned RSL lately. Though that didn't happen in the last game. At least in the last game, RSL finally got the better of the Dynamo with a 3-2 win before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams and a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Keep in mind, these were playoff matchup as well, where this was the one that RSL won in PK to force game 3, and then this is the one that Houston won in PKs to basically win the series outright. But before that, it was a 2-1 win that the Dynamo had against RSL, and then Houston win 3-0 against RSL, and that was just a couple of days after they won against RSL in the U.S. Open Cup and knocking them out of the U.S. Open Cup and made it to the final and eventually also spoiling Inter Miami party of doing a double as well. So yeah, this is a matchup that again, if you're a Dynamo fan, you're looking forward to it because you have RSL number and you might want to say you want some revenge against RSL. Consider in the last match, both of these teams looked very good. It was a very competitive kind of game, but we'll see if that is the case, and especially with the way that the big concern I would say about Houston is that their home form has not been very good, and that kind of continue in the last game as well, getting a nil draw. But for RSL, they've been very good this season on the road. They're one of the best road team, and it's been that kind of way for the last 2 years as well. So we'll see whether or not if they can get a win. Especially they look a little bit like themselves in the last game against New England after getting that big win at home. Now, moving on, we got St. Louis versus Minnesota United. So St. Louis, it's hard to believe, but they're technically still alive in the playoff race. They're kind of almost in the outside looking in, but they have a chance to really get themselves in the playoff race to face against a team that literally is just above the red line, that is Minnesota United. Now, as a Minnesota fan, I would love to see the Loons make it to the playoffs, and if they do make it to the playoffs, I think they have met expectation. I mean, I know obviously if they miss out on the playoffs, it'll be disappointing because it's the second year in a row that they miss out on the playoffs, and especially after that good run that they had and them just kind of collapsing in the middle of the season, it's kind of disappointing. But you got to remember, this is a rebuild year for this team, and the fact that they were that good in the beginning of the season was almost nothing short of a miracle. And especially now that they're started to get some of these new guys in, and this has started to kind of look more like an Eric Ramsey team rather than an Adrian Heath team. I think it could be a chance where if these guys can get going, it could be good because again, one of the thing you want to also give the new signing benefit of the doubt. You need to give them time, and unfortunately, as we head into the playoff stretch, there's really no time to get these new signing uh feel comfortable so that they can make a playoff run. But that's kind of what Minnesota has to do. And again, playing against the St. Louis side, that the one thing about St. Louis is that their new signing has really hit the ground running. All their new signing has been a big hit, and it just kind of makes you wonder if they would have made these signings a little earlier. They would have really been in the mix of this right in the thick of it. I mean, there still is, but it could have been really in a good position if they make these signings a little bit sooner. But in terms of all-time meeting, one wins apiece for both of these teams, and those wins are coming on the road as the road team has kind of got the better so far with St. Louis winning 2-1 against Minnesota and then Minnesota winning 1-0 against St. Louis, which that was the game where that ended St. Louis' perfect run to start the season. Remember, St. Louis, they start the season with 5 wins to start their life in MLS. That ended when Minnesota won that game. So yeah, we'll see whether or not if Minnesota can do the same thing. Again, a couple of weeks ago, I would have felt confident that this would be a good road win for Minnesota. Minnesota is one of those teams that, just like last year, for whatever reason, they do better on the road compared to uh to when they're playing at home. But unfortunately, this is a different St. Louis team. This is a St. Louis team that have looked much better, look like almost a little bit like the St. Louis team of last season being the best team in the Western conference. And again, they're still a ways out in terms of the playoff race. They really need to have almost a Sporting KC kind of miracle run last season to make it. But if they want to do so, this is a chance to do so, especially against a team that is just above the red line, and we'll see whether or not if that is the case. Now, moving on, we got Colorado versus the Portland Timbers, and I'll tell you what, if you're a Rapids fan, you've been waiting for this game for a long time because you must hate the fact that the last couple of games against the Timbers have not gone well whatsoever. I mean, it has gone completely in the wrong direction, and when I meant that, I meant after the Timbers knocked the Rapids out. Or actually, they didn't knock the Rapids out in the League Cup. I forgot they play each other in the group stage, but yeah, the Timbers absolutely smacked the Rapids in the League Cup. That was like really the only time I would say besides LAFC did in the semifinal where the Rapids really got absolutely bulldozed in a League Cup matchup because as I mentioned they had that Cinderella run that got them a CONCACAF Champions Cup spot. But yeah, this is a game that the Rapids fan been looking forward to because after all the beating that they have, and now that they're playing at home, they're definitely licking their chops and thinking that this is a revenge game against the Timbers. But in terms of the all-time meeting, or actually the record, 13-5-9, and the Timbers have an 11-7-9 record. This is the only game that starts at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 or 6:30 p.m. Pacific. But all time meaning 15-7-10 in favor of the Timbers. And as I mentioned, besides the 4-0 win that the Timbers had against the Rapids in the Leeds Cup, the first game of the season, yeah, was not one that Rapids fan want to remember. They lost 4-1 in that one before the Timbers won 3-2 against the Rapids. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, and then the Timbers won 3-0 against the Rapids, and then it was the Rapids winning 2-0 against the Portland Timbers. So the Timbers has kind of had the Rapids number lately, but you got to remember most of these matchup is playing at Providence Park, and that again, that the Rapids want to have some revenge in this game, especially after the beatdown that they take it against the Timbers. They feel like with the home field advantage that they have, and unsurprisingly this season the Rapids have been very good at home. They've always been a good home team, and that is due to the altitude that they have as a big event advantage, and that yeah they're definitely looking to trying to give the Timbers a little taste of their own medicine and maybe themselves also putting a beat down against the Timbers because really the Rapids have carried that momentum that they had in the Leagues Cup into MLS play as well. This is definitely one of the team that people should watch out for. And once again, I wouldn't. I mean, I want to say they're kind of a dark horse team, but I feel like this is a team that could be on hand of doing something special in the playoffs. Now, when it comes to facing against some good team, that will be a bit of a question. I would say they're kind of like the Houston Dynamo of last season, where many people didn't believe that they could go super deep, even though they're a dark horse team. But they went all the way into the Western Conference Final. Do not be surprised if the Rapids could do the same thing as well. Now, moving on to the game that I'm pretty sure everybody want me to talk about, and that of course is the Galaxy and LAFC. So yeah, this is a game that everybody has been talking about. I mean, the main headline obviously is Giroud versus Royce, but I would argue the main headline of this game is this might be the game that decide who's gonna win the Western Conference, at least in the regular season. That is obviously when we get to the playoffs, that could be a different story. But these two teams are pretty much head and shoulder above everybody in the Western Conference. The Galaxy with a 15-7-6 record, whereas LAFC with a 14-6-6 record. All-time meeting, 9 wins apiece. But in terms of the last five head-to-head matchup, LAFC actually has had Galaxy number at least in the last three. They won the last three with LAFC winning 2-1 against the Galaxy. This was, of course, at the Rose Bowl. Then LAFC winning 2-1 against the Galaxy. Then they won 4-2 against the Galaxy before the Galaxy winning 2-1 against LAFC. And then LAFC winning 3-2 against the Galaxy. So, yeah, 4 out of the last 5 meeting has been in favor of LAFC. And that anytime when there's an El Trafico, you know it's going to be a track meet. You know there's going to be nonstop action and there's going to be probably tons of goals that's gonna happen. So I say that, but the last two games only feature like free goals apart. So maybe defense is starting to become a thing a little bit in this rivalry. But one thing for sure is that this should be a very good matchup, and again, it could be maybe even be a matchup that we might see in the Western Conference final. And I say that is because we're definitely not going to see this matchup at least in the first round match. If we ever see a first round matchup between both of these teams in a best of free series. I mean, that's gonna be money, revenue, and popcorn kind of stuff if we do see that. But yeah, in order for both of these teams play in the playoffs, both of these teams will have to meet in the Western Conference final. Which I wouldn't say that wouldn't happen because again, we have seen before, a 1v2 series has happened more often than you think it is. But one thing for sure is that yeah, this should be a very entertaining game. There's no doubt the Galaxy will have more to prove in this one because not only to keep themselves above LAFC and keep themselves first in the West, but not to mention they must be tired of losing LAFC at least a lot in the last couple of games. Now, moving on into the last game on Saturday, and unfortunately, this game pretty much completely overshadowed what this game is. I mean, I'm pretty sure unless you're a Whitecaps fan or even a Quakes fan, actually, I don't even think a Quakes fan want to see this game because, again, what's kind of interesting about this game is that not only it's a third wheel derby, but the Quakes could actually be eliminated from playoffs before a ball was kicked in this game. In fact, I think if Minnesota can beat St. Louis, the Quakes are officially out of the playoffs, which means that we're getting to that part of the season where I'm going to start doing the moving forward series episode. And once again, it feels like this is like for the past couple of years, the Quakes have always been the first team I talk about, and it's unfortunate that is the case because I go on the order of teams that got eliminated, and that it's unfortunate I have to do them first because it feels like the narrative continues where every time when this team barely make it to the playoff, the very next year they're just going to absolutely collapse, and that's kind of the case this year. They have a 5-2-20 record. They have lost 20 games this season. That is a brutal little stretch, and even though they have won more games than they have back in 2018 when they had the worst points total in club history, could still be a chance that they could break that with the way that they're still 7 points away from reaching the lowest points total that they ever had in club history. And it doesn't help that they face against a Whitecaps team that have a 12-6 and 8 record, and the Whitecaps, for the most part this season has been pretty good at home. All-time meeting 12-12 and 11 in favor of the Whitecaps. I remember when the Quakes played against the Whitecaps a couple of years ago, the Quakes always seems to have the Whitecaps number. It seems like it's a little bit different now. Because the first ever meeting it was a 2-0 road win that the Whitecaps had against the Quakes before the Quakes did win 1-0 on the road last year against the Whitecaps. But if you remember that game, that was Danielle game, as Danielle basically single-handedly won the game for the Quakes with the way that the Whitecaps had like tons of to shot on goal, but Danielle just basically channeled his inner Andre Blake and impression, just kind of stopping everything in this game. Should I say Roman Berkey, because Roman Berkey did win the goalkeeper of the year last season. But after that, it was a 2-1 win that the Quakes had against Vancouver. Before the Quakes did win 2-0 against the Whitecaps. Then it was a free draw between both of these teams. So whenever they meet at BC Place, something crazy could happen. Whether a goalkeeping sensational performance or a high scoring game that we saw a couple of games ago at BC Place, but still, it's unfortunate that this game is going to be heavily overshadowed because of the fact that it takes place the same time as the biggest game of this match week, and maybe the biggest game of the season that is between the Galaxy and LAFC, which is why there's a reason why this is called the Derby of Derby for a very long time, because unfortunately both of these teams kind of pretty much play third fiddle in terms of the other teams that weren't really kind of considered themselves the major rivalry of their region. Well, moving on, we move on to the last game, which is Seattle versus Sporting KC. So this is the only game that happens on Sunday. It's a 7:15 p.m. Eastern, 4:15 p.m. Pacific. But the real time is 7:25 p.m. Eastern, 4:25 p.m. Pacific kick, because it's on FS1. Seattle have a 12-7-9 record, whereas Sporting KC have a 7-7-14 record. And Lake St. Louis, Sporting KC, believe it or not, are still kind of in the playoff race, but their hopes are definitely dimming as we speak, and that draw against the Red Bulls definitely did not help the cause. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 13-5-12 in favor of Seattle. Last five head-to-head matchups, Sporting KC actually won 2-1 against Seattle, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that was. Oh no, actually no. I'm thinking there was another game where Sporting KC won against Seattle that kind of knocked Seattle out of the uh, eliminate them in the playoff contention for the first time in their club history. But before that, Sporting KC did win 2-1 against Seattle before Seattle absolutely destroyed Sporting KC 4-1. That was the Jordan Morris game. Jordan Morris had 4 goals in that one. Then Sporting KC won 1-0 against Seattle before Seattle winning 3-0 against Sporting KC. And unfortunately, if you're Sporting KC, you're facing a very angry Seattle team that, fresh off of the Cascadia Derby loss that they suffer. That they wants to bounce back in this game, and we'll see whether or not if they can do so against an SKC side that, for the most part this season, they have not been very good this season on the road. And again, they're keeping that faint playoff hopes alive. But if you ask any sporting fan, the real prize this season is the U.S. Open Cup, and they're looking forward to the U.S. Open Cup final against LAFC in just a couple of weeks. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of me looking at all of these games for match week number. I think it's 32, if I'm not mistaken. It's basically the match week after the September international break, and again, it's kind of a mini Heineken rivalry week because we have some big rivalry in these games as well. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games and your prediction for all of these games. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.